Joining me now to better understand the importance of the space mission is former astronaut and retired Air Force Colonel Terry Virts. Colonel Virts, thank you for coming on. Much appreciated. Can't wait to hear your perspective on all of this. Your career at NASA spans 16 years. You spent 213 days in space, conducted 3 spacewalks, piloted a space shuttle, and were the commander of the International Space Station. You're also the author of How to Astronaut, an insider's guide to leaving planet Earth. So I can't think of a better person to ask, why is this launch today so important and historic?
Well, it's a big deal for NASA because this commercial crew program that we've had for the last 10 years basically is finally into the operational phase. It was a test program. We had that mission a few months ago that a lot of people followed, but now we're out of the test phase, and this is a routine launch to the space station, which is a big deal.
So, but I mean, people hear about, launches to the International Space Station. Like, why is this such a big deal?
Well, you need to have some way to get people to and from the station. And for the last 20 years of space station ops, it's only been the Russian Soyuz, which has been great. They've been a great partner. That's how I went to the station on my last flight. But this gives NASA some redundancy. It's also something that's launching from America, which is important also.
All right, wanted to make sure we hit on all of that. So you flew to the International Space Station aboard an aging Russian rocket, which cost $90 million per seat. You mentioned the rocket. Right now, Mike Hopkins, Victor Glover, Shannon Walker, and Soichi Noguchi are aboard the state-of-the-art Crew Dragon spaceship. How important is this step forward for NASA's continued space research?
Well, like I said, if you can't get people to and from the station, you can't have a space station. So the ability to have a crew rotational rocket is necessary. And I think more than that, there's SpaceX. There's also Boeing, which will be launching next year on their capsule. And it just gives a redundancy to get people up and down, which is something that you need. The real mission isn't the launch. Kind of in the 60s, that was the big thing. Everybody focused on the launch. Launching people to and from the station is just one of the logistical cogs in this giant wheel of a way to get people there, so that they can do the mission, which is science, when they get there.
Right, that's really interesting because you're right. We're also focused on this launch. We're glued to the TV watching this video.
Right.
And you see in the video that the rocket's fully automated, but the astronauts are wearing gloves that allow them to use touchscreens. I'm just wondering, as you watch this play out, how different is this experience compared to your trips into space?
It's very different. When I was on the space shuttle, I was a pilot, and I actually flew the shuttle in space, with a control stick and maneuvered the spaceship. And then when it was back in the air, coming down for landing, I flew it like an airplane. And so that's not at all what happens. That you're basically along for the ride. SpaceX is 100% automated, and it's like an iPad. It's I want to go left, and you push the left button, and the spaceship maneuvers. They shouldn't have to do that manually, but if you do, you control it with an iPad, which is pretty cool. It's kind of like the movie 2001, if you remember that, where you just sat there and the robot took you to the space station. That's what's happening today.
So, all right, let's talk about once they arrive at their destination. What are some of the more unusual things that these astronauts will have to adjust to while they're on the space station?
Well, 3 of them have flown before, but Ike Glover, this is his first flight. And one of the things that's really disorienting, when you're in the capsule, it's really small. There's a little bit of room you can maneuver around, but it's not that big of a volume. It's like you're in a small closet or something like that. And then when you open the hatch, you're in this giant 747, and that can be disorienting. Some people have really had a hard time just like getting dizzy. Plus, you're floating for the first time. On my first mission, I took 2 days. I had the worst headache I've ever had in my life, taking a lot of ibuprofen. And then it was like a light switch went on. My brain figured out what I was doing to it, and it figured out 0G. When I went back 4 years later, 5 years later, it remembered. And so on my second flight, I didn't have any trouble at all. It was immediately okay. So there's something in your brain. There's some neurons that get rewired that figure out weightlessness, but it takes a few days. Everybody has some type of headache, or it's not a lot of fun the first couple days.
That's actually fascinating, though, that you went back and you were totally fine because your brain remembered. All right, Colonel Terry Virts.
I was wondering that. Yeah.
I mean, that's just anecdotally what your experience was, but I find that really interesting. All right, Terry Virts, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your fascinating perspective, given all the experience you had. Really interesting to hear what you had to say about this.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for talking about How to Astronaut. It's a fun book.
Of course.